Under the relentless Mesopotamian sun, the wind moves across a barren stretch of land where once a city of dreams rose from dust. There are no chariots rumbling through its streets anymore, no banners fly from its walls. But once, this was Babylon Empire, whose name was whispered with awe and fear. It was a city so magnificent that it became a symbol of human ambition itself. To speak of Babylon was to speak of power, of beauty, of the impossible made real. The Euphrates River winds through the landscape like a silver ribbon, slow and patient, as if it remembers everything. It was here, thousands of years ago, that humans built something unlike anything the world had ever seen. Babylon was not born in a day. It grew from a small settlement into a fortress of trade, culture, and myth. Its kings dreamed not of survival but of immortality, of building something that would outlive them all. And in a way, they succeeded. Imagine approaching the city in its golden age. From miles away, its walls dominate the horizon. They rise more than 100 feet high, thick enough for chariots to ride side by side on their tops. Soldiers keep watch from towers, their eyes scanning the desert. To enter Babylon is not just to pass through a gate, it's to step into another world. As you draw closer, you see the Ishtar Gate, a masterpiece of glazed blue brick and golden beasts. Rows of lions, bulls, and dragons march across its surface in silent majesty. The gate seems almost alive, glowing under the sun. For travelers and traders, it was a vision they would never forget. For the Babylonians, it was proof that their city stood at the center of the world. Beyond the gate, the city opens like a dream. The streets are wide and lined with baked brick buildings, each more intricate than the last. Merchants shout in a dozen languages, their stalls piled high with spices, silk, and lapis lazuli. The air is thick with the scent of incense and roasted grain. Carts creak over stone streets. Priests in long robes move through the crowds, their heads shaved, their eyes always lifted to the heavens. Babylon was a place where trade and faith walked hand in hand. The gods were everywhere, on carvings, on banners, on lips. Above all stood Marduk, the city's patron god, lord of creation. His temple Esagila towered over the city, its ziggurat casting a shadow across everything. Climbing its terraces, priests would look out across the empire, believing themselves closer to the heavens. And maybe, for a moment, the people of Babylon believed their city had been chosen by the gods. Every ritual, every festival, every law reinforced that belief. In spring, the New Year's festival turned the city into a living theater. The king himself would walk in procession, passing through the Ishtar Gate as priests carried statues of the gods. Music, chanting, and the sound of drums filled the air. It wasn't just celebration, it was a reminder. Babylon was divine. Babylon was eternal. And yet, behind this splendor lay something even more powerful. Babylon was a city of astronomers and mathematicians, of scribes who carved cuneiform into clay tablets with patient hands. They charted the stars, predicted eclipses, measured the seasons. They believed the movements of the heavens could reveal the will of the gods. And in studying the sky, they built the foundation for the science we know today. Babylon's rulers understood something few others did. Power was not just built with walls and soldiers, it was built with stories. And they crafted stories better than anyone. Tales of mighty kings who conquered with divine blessing. Legends of creation, myths of floods and gods and heroes. To live in Babylon was to live in a world where history and myth were indistinguishable. But perhaps nothing captures the world's imagination like the Hanging Gardens. Though no ruins of them have ever been found, ancient writers describe them with awe. Terraces stacked high, covered in green, with waterfalls flowing from above. Trees and flowers from distant lands were said to bloom in the desert air. Some claimed Nebuchadnezzar II built them for his queen, who missed the mountains of her homeland. Others say they never existed, that they were born from foreign envy. But whether real or imagined, the gardens became Babylon's greatest legend. This city was not isolated. It sat at the crossroads of empires, where caravans arrived from Persia, India, Arabia, and beyond. Babylon thrived on the movement of people, goods, and ideas. Its markets were a living map of the world. Gold, spices, wool, ivory, everything passed through its gates. Every merchant carried not just goods but stories, and Babylon absorbed them all. But like all great powers, Babylon's brilliance cast long shadows. Wealth bred envy, glory attracted threats, neighboring empires watched, and in time they would come knocking at its gates. Yet for now, in this moment, Babylon was untouchable. Its rulers believed its walls were unbreachable, its gods invincible, its destiny eternal. Inside the palace, the king sat upon his throne beneath carved lions and winged bulls. Nebuchadnezzar II was not just a ruler. He saw himself as the guardian of civilization itself. He poured wealth into temples, walls, and monuments. Every stone was meant to speak his name for eternity. He believed Babylon would outlast time. And yet, time is the one thing no empire can rule. The Euphrates flowed on. Empires rose and fell beyond its horizon. But for now, Babylon glittered. A city built from dust and ambition. A place where gods walked among men, where knowledge and myth danced together, where the impossible felt real. As night falls over the city, the torches are lit. Their flames flicker against blue walls and golden beasts. The air is warm, filled with music and laughter. Astronomers climb to the ziggurat's top and look to the sky, tracing the constellations. Down below, merchants close their stalls. Lovers walk through gardens. Priests whisper prayers to Babylon is alive. And though centuries will bury it, though conquerors will trample its stones, tonight it stands untouchable, a jewel in the desert, a dream made real. The story of Babylon is only beginning. Its walls may seem eternal, but beyond them, forces are gathering, empires are watching, and the winds of history are shifting. The city that believes it can never fall is about to face the truth of all empires. Greatness is never safe, but tonight, under the ancient stars, Babylon sleeps in glory. The night sky above Babylon was unlike any other. Far from the distant mountains and the restless waves of the sea, the stars here burned with a still, unbroken clarity. For the astronomers who climbed the ziggurats, each star was a sign, each constellation a message. They believed the gods were not distant, they were written into the sky itself. And Babylon, standing proud beneath them, was their chosen city. Morning came gently. As the first light of dawn spilled over the Euphrates, the city awakened in waves. Merchants rolled open their stalls. Servants swept the courtyards. Farmers carried baskets of grain to the markets. The priests began their chants, soft and rhythmic, rising through the air like a slow drumbeat. It was a city with a rhythm, a heartbeat, a living soul. And at the center of that soul was power. The king's palace was unlike any other building in the empire. Its walls were lined with glazed bricks, its doorways guarded by colossal winged bulls with human faces, symbols of strength and vigilance. Within those walls, decisions were made that would shape the ancient world. Babylon wasn't just a city of commerce and faith. It was the seat of an empire, and its rulers believed their destiny was to dominate. Nebuchadnezzar II sat at the peak of Babylon's golden age. He had rebuilt the city from the foundations up, covering it with monumental walls, temples, and the legendary gate that bore the name of Ishtar. He expanded its borders, conquered territories, and filled Babylon with spoils of war. But Nebuchadnezzar understood something few conquerors did. Empire is not sustained by fear alone. It is built on spectacle, belief, and the sense of inevitability. He poured wealth into festivals, rituals, and public works. He wanted every citizen, every traveler, every enemy to believe the same thing. Babylon is eternal. In the springtime, the New Year's festival was a spectacle that drew thousands. Priests carried statues of the gods through the Processional Way, the grand avenue that ran from the Ishtar Gate to the Temple of Marduk. Trumpets blared, drums thundered. The king walked before the people not as a man, but as the chosen of the gods. In that moment, even the poorest citizen could feel they belonged to something greater than themselves. But beneath the gold and the music, Babylon was not a utopia. It was a machine powered by countless hands. Workers toiled in the sun, mixing mud and straw to make the bricks that built its walls. Farmers bent their backs to feed its endless appetite. Soldiers marched far from home to secure its frontiers. Like every empire, its beauty was built upon the labor of many and the power of a few. Still, the city was unlike any other of its time. In Babylon, knowledge was as valuable as gold. Scribes recorded the movements of the planets, mathematicians calculated with precision. Doctors studied the body, priests wrote hymns that were thousands of lines long. It was a place where the written word was not just communication, it was power. Clay tablets filled the archives, recording everything from royal decrees to love songs, from omens to debt. In those tablets, the story of Babylon was preserved. At night, in quiet courtyards, poets recited verses to their lovers. Musicians plucked strings and struck drums. The city was alive, not just with trade and politics, but with art. It was said that the language of Babylon carried a beauty unlike any other, soft, flowing, full of rhythm. To speak it was to taste history. The empire stretched far, but its heart remained here, where the river bent and the walls gleamed. Yet even as Babylon basked in its golden glow, the world beyond was restless. The Persians in the east were growing stronger. The Medes were uniting their tribes, and to the west, smaller kingdoms whispered of resistance. Babylon had made itself the center of the world, but the world never stays still. The Euphrates, though tamed by the hands of engineers, remained unpredictable. When it flooded, the fields grew lush. When it ran low, famine whispered through the streets. The Babylonians built canals and irrigation systems to bend nature to their will. But nature, like history, always finds its way. It is patient, and empires, no matter how mighty, are not immune. In the palace, the king's advisors brought news from the frontiers. Grain shortages in one province, rebellions in another, trade caravans delayed by bandits. The king listened with the confidence of a man who believed his walls were higher than the reach of fate. But cracks, however small, had begun to appear. Still, Babylon's culture shone brighter than any warning sign. Its astronomers could predict eclipses. Its architects built structures that reached the heavens. Its laws, carved and written, formed the backbone of order. Travelers who came to Babylon spoke of it as if it were a place of magic. They wrote of the gardens that floated above the ground, of the gates that glimmered like sapphires, of temples where priests spoke to gods. Babylon was not just a city. It was a performance, a living myth carefully crafted by power. And yet, for the people who lived here, it was simply home. Children splashed in the river, bakers kneaded dough at dawn, traders argued over prices, soldiers sharpened their blades. Life moved forward, ordinary and extraordinary all at once. In the royal court, foreign ambassadors bowed before the king. Their lands might have been distant, their tongues unfamiliar, but they all recognized the same thing when they saw the Ishtar Gate. Babylon's power was not a secret. It was a message carved into every brick: we are forever. But history teaches us one truth again and again: no empire is forever. The Persians were watching. Cyrus the Great was rising. His empire was built not just on conquest, but on strategy, diplomacy, and patience. While Babylon shined under the sun, Cyrus quietly prepared. He studied its strengths, he learned its weaknesses, he waited for the perfect moment. Within Babylon, the seeds of its own downfall had already been planted. The same river that nourished it would one day betray it. The same confidence that made it mighty would blind it. Empires rarely fall because they are weak, they fall because they believe they never will. But for now, the city continued to glitter. On festival nights, the streets overflowed with torches and laughter. Music echoed through courtyards. The great ziggurat of Marduk reached toward the sky like a ladder to the gods. Priests whispered prophecies. Lovers met in hidden gardens. Children ran through alleyways chasing shadows. Babylon, the gate of the gods, stood tall against time. Its rulers looked out across the horizon and saw nothing that could challenge them. And perhaps that was their greatest mistake. The winds were changing, but no one inside those magnificent walls could hear their approach. The power of Babylon was like a fire, bright, mesmerizing, and for a long time, untouchable. For decades, it had stood as the beating heart of empires, a symbol of what human hands could build when ambition reached beyond the horizon. But every fire, no matter how great, casts a shadow. The Euphrates flowed quietly through the city, the same river that had carried its rise. In the beginning, it was the lifeline, a source of life, trade, and strength. But rivers have long memories. They nourish, but they can also betray. Far beyond the gates of Babylon, the world was changing. Cyrus the Great, a name whispered at first, had become a storm. His armies stretched across the land like a tide. City after city fell under his rule, not with reckless destruction, but with calculation. Where Babylon believed it was eternal, Cyrus believed in opportunity. Inside Babylon's walls, the people did not feel the storm at first. The markets were still busy, the festivals still grand, the priests still whispered their prayers. But rumors began to weave their way through the city like smoke. Caravans arrived late, their goods fewer. Merchants spoke in low voices of Persian victories in distant lands. Soldiers returning from the frontier carried silence on their faces. They had seen what was coming. In the royal palace, the king sat upon his golden throne surrounded by advisors. They brought him reports, fortresses that had surrendered without a fight. Rulers who had pledged loyalty to Persia, cities that once feared Babylon now raising Cyrus banners. The king listened, but his eyes betrayed no fear. He believed, as all rulers of great empires do, that his walls were higher than the reach of history. Babylon had stood for centuries. Why should it fall now? Outside, the river flowed beneath bridges built with care and pride. Farmers still watered their fields, priests still marked the stars, and yet something subtle had shifted. It was not visible in the stones or the streets, it was in the air. A stillness, like the quiet before a storm. Cyrus did not march toward Babylon with reckless haste. He moved like water, slow, patient, unstoppable. His messengers spread promises. He told conquered lands that he came not to destroy but to free them. He promised tolerance, respect, a better rule. Where Babylon relied on fear and spectacle, Cyrus used strategy and trust. One by one, cities along the river opened their gates to him. No massive battles, no endless sieges, just doors opening like the river making room for the tide. Inside Babylon, not everyone was loyal. Some saw the Persian king as a liberator, not an enemy. Discontent had grown quietly, like roots under the soil. Babylon's power had been absolute for so long that it forgot how fragile power really is. In the temples, priests began to speak more cautiously. The stars did not shine with the same certainty. Eclipses and comets were read as signs of change. The gods, they said, were watching. And in the streets, the people began to watch too. The king ordered the gates reinforced, soldiers stationed along the walls, and messengers sent out. But even he knew what his walls truly meant. They had protected Babylon from armies before. They could hold back horses, arrows, and men, but they could not hold back the slow erosion of loyalty. And still, the river flowed. It was the key to everything. Cyrus understood that. He studied Babylon as a hunter studies, its prey not rushing in, but waiting for the right moment. He knew the city was proud. He knew it believed itself untouchable. So he planned not to break the walls, but to slip beneath them. As the Persians drew closer, the city changed. The once lively processional way grew quieter. Fewer traders arrived. Farmers from outlying lands fled toward the city seeking safety. The markets echoed less with laughter and more with whispers. Even the torches at night seemed to burn lower. And yet, the king refused to bend. He believed the city could endure any siege. He believed the gods favored him. He believed Babylon was eternal. Cyrus did not give him the siege he expected. He diverted the Euphrates, bit by bit. Persian engineers cut channels, lowered the river's flow, and found a way to drain its strength. Babylon's walls were tall, but its river gates built for trade, for boats, for life were low. One night, as the city slept, the river fell silent. The Persians entered Babylon not with a thunder of war, but with a whisper. Soldiers waded through the shallows where the Euphrates once ran deep. The great walls meant nothing now. The gates remained unopened, but they didn't need to be. The river itself had become the path. Inside, the people awoke not to the sound of war, but to the soft steps of soldiers already within their city. The empire that had claimed eternity was taken in a single night. There was no great burning, no rivers of blood. The fall of Babylon was quiet, almost gentle. It was not crushed, it was absorbed. Cyrus walked into Babylon not as a destroyer, but as a king. He entered through its gates to a city stunned into silence. Some expected slaughter. Instead, he offered mercy. He honored their temples, respected their gods, and allowed the city to continue breathing. In one night, the greatest empire of its age was folded into another, as easily as a parchment sealed with a new name. The king of Babylon was dethroned, his power dissolved. The great walls still stood, the ziggurat still reached for the sky. The gardens, if they ever truly existed, still bloomed. But Babylon no longer belonged to itself. Its voice was no longer its own. The people adjusted quickly. Empires fall, but life continues. Merchants reopened their stalls. Priests learned new prayers. Farmers planted their crops as they always had. But beneath it all, something was different. Babylon was no longer the beating heart of the world. It was a jewel in someone else's crown. Cyrus issued his famous decree. He freed the captive peoples held by Babylon. He allowed temples in distant lands to be rebuilt. He painted himself not as a conqueror, but as a restorer. It was a political masterstroke. Babylon's former enemies began to see Persia not with fear, but with respect. And so the city that once believed itself eternal became one of many under a greater banner. Yet Babylon's story did not end that night. The city remained magnificent, its architecture and culture intact. For generations it continued to be a place of power, learning, and legend. But its era of being the center of everything it passed. The river that had brought life had also carried its empire away. In the years that followed, Babylon became a symbol. To some it was a cautionary tale, a reminder that pride blinds the mighty. To others it was a marvel, a place where human ambition had once brushed the sky. Travelers wrote of its gates, its towers, its gardens. Poets turned its rise and fall into songs. Prophets turned its name into a warning. The Persians ruled wisely at first, but no empire lasts forever. Alexander the Great would one day arrive, drawn to the legendary city like a moth to a flame. He would stand within its walls, gaze upon its temples, and feel the weight of history. Babylon would become his prize, then his tomb. Empires came and went, but the city remained older than the conquerors, older than their dreams. In the end, Babylon did not vanish in a single moment of fire. It faded like a star, slowly, quietly, over centuries. Its bricks crumbled, its gardens dried, its ziggurat fell silent. And yet, even in ruin, it never truly died. The world carried its name forward, whispered it in stories, carved it into holy texts, etched it into memory. The fall of Babylon was not a violent scream. It was a soft turning of the river, a quiet rewriting of destiny. And so the city that believed itself eternal became a lesson that still echoes thousands of years later. No wall is too high, no empire too strong, no glory too bright to fade. The empire was gone, but the name remained. Babylon, even after the Persians marched through its silent riverbeds, even after its kings were dethroned and its banners lowered, the city did not vanish from human memory. If anything, it became larger in defeat than it ever was in power. Empires fall, stones crumble, walls decay, but legends, they live forever. The Persians made Babylon one of their capitals. They understood its weight, its symbolism. Cyrus had not burned it down because he knew Babylon was more than walls and gates. It was an idea, a name that made men listen, a symbol that could give his rule legitimacy. And so Babylon, conquered, continued to breathe though its breath no longer belonged to itself. In the years that followed, the city became a bridge between worlds. Persian kings held court in its halls. Its temples still glimmered beneath the desert sun. Its astronomers continued their patient study of the stars, their observations shaping how humanity would understand the heavens for centuries to come. Babylon remained a place of power, but no longer the center of power. It was a chapter in another empire's story. Then came Alexander, young, ambitious, unstoppable, a conqueror who had crushed the Persian Empire and set his eyes on Babylon as the prize above all others. When he entered the city, there was no great battle. The people welcomed him. In their eyes, Babylon had seen many kings, but few who understood its weight like he did. Alexander did not just want Babylon, he wanted to be Babylon, to be seen as the heir to its legacy. He walked through its processional way. He gazed upon its temples. He studied its walls, its gardens, its ziggurat, and imagined his empire centered here, at the crossroads of the world. He ordered restoration of its great structures. He planned to make it his capital. He dreamed of ruling the world from the same city where Nebuchadnezzar had once walked. But fate is a quiet, merciless thing. Not long after arriving in Babylon, Alexander fell ill. In the same city he believed would be the heart of his new empire, he took his last breath. The city that had outlived empires outlived him, too. Babylon remained. Alexander did not. After his death, his generals divided his empire like scavengers at a feast. Babylon became one of many contested prizes. Armies came and went. New rulers marched through its gates. Its once proud ziggurat began to crumble. Its gardens, if they ever truly hung in the air, withered under neglect. Time was doing what even the mightiest conquerors could not. It was erasing Babylon, grain by grain, and yet it never disappeared completely. The ruins remained a skeleton of an empire. Travelers wrote of them with awe and sadness. Historians recorded its former greatness. Poets whispered its name as a symbol of glory and loss. The Bible turned Babylon into something larger than history. It became a symbol of arrogance, excess, and inevitable downfall. The Tower of Babel, the Whore of Babylon, these were not just stories. They were echoes of the real city, reshaped by time, fear, and faith. But Babylon's true legacy was not only in warnings, it was in what it left behind. The Babylonians had studied the stars and mapped their movements. Their understanding of celestial cycles shaped calendars and guided farmers for centuries. They laid the groundwork for astronomy as we know it. Their mathematicians gave us the 60-minute hour, the 360-degree circle. Their scribes preserved epics and laws on clay tablets that outlasted their empires. Babylon's influence flowed like a river through history. It shaped the empires that followed the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans. Its architecture inspired cities across continents. Its myths wove their way into the fabric of religion, literature, and legend. Even when the bricks fell silent, its voice continued to speak. Centuries turned into millennia. Empires rose and fell. The world changed. But Babylon remained in humanity's collective memory, like a star that no longer burns but whose light still crosses the void. Explorers, archaeologists, and dreamers searched for it beneath the sands of Mesopotamia. They dug through layers of dust and time, brushing away the silence to find fragments of a world that once believed it would last forever. When archaeologists unearthed the Ishtar Gate, they uncovered not just bricks but a message. The blue-glazed tiles still gleamed. The lions and dragons still marched in perfect rows. Even after thousands of years, the artistry spoke clearly. Babylon had been magnificent. Its builders had known their work would speak long after their voices were gone. Today, part of that gate stands not in Babylon, but in a museum in Berlin. Visitors walk through its reconstructed archway, staring up at the golden beasts, and for a moment, they are travelers stepping through the gate of the gods. The city lives on in fragments scattered across the world, in museums, in books, in whispers. But its ruins still rest in modern-day Iraq. Crumbling walls, silent foundations, traces of streets where merchants once haggled and priests once prayed. The Euphrates still flows nearby, as it always has. The sun still burns the land as it did thousands of years ago. If you stand among those ruins in silence, you can almost feel the echo. A city that once ruled the world now sleeps beneath the dust, but it is not forgotten. Babylon's story is more than a tale of rise and fall. It is a mirror. Every great power that came after it saw something of itself in Babylon. Rome saw it. London saw it. Berlin, Washington. Every empire believes, as Babylon once did, that its walls are too high to fall. And every empire learns the same lesson. Time does not bow to kings. And yet Babylon's legacy is not just in its downfall, it is in what it built. It gave us the language of empire, the architecture of dreams, the mathematics of time, the stars mapped into meaning. It gave us the idea that humans can build something so grand it touches eternity, even if only for a moment. The myth of Babylon grew larger than the city itself. It became a symbol of ambition, of brilliance, of the razor's edge between greatness and ruin. Its story survived because it is not just Babylon's story, it is humanity's story. The stones may crumble, but stories are harder to kill. They travel through centuries, changing shape but never truly dying. Babylon's story traveled with traders, priests, conquerors, poets, archaeologists, filmmakers, and now through you, the listener. The gate of the gods may no longer stand tall, but its echo is louder than ever. If you listen closely, you can still hear it. The distant murmur of a bustling marketplace, the soft chanting of priests beneath the stars, the rush of the Euphrates flowing through the heart of an empire, the whisper of a king who believed he could build forever. Babylon was more than a place, it was a dream so powerful that even when its stones turned to dust, the world could not stop speaking its name. And perhaps, in the end, that is true eternity, not the walls we build, but the stories we leave behind. Centuries after its fall, Babylon remains alive in the human imagination. It is in the stories we tell about power and pride. It is in the warnings whispered in holy texts. It is in the museums that display its treasures, in the textbooks that trace its language, in the films and documentaries that try to capture its shadow. And perhaps that is what makes Babylon different. It did not simply vanish, it transformed. From a city of bricks into a city of memory. From a king's empire into humanity's legend. From a place to a symbol. The desert wind still blows across the ruins. It carries with it grains of sand that once lay beneath the Ishtar Gate, beneath the feet of kings and conquerors. Those grains have seen it all rise, glory, fall, silence, and through them, Babylon still breathes. Every empire that has ever risen has, in some way, walked the path Babylon walked. And every empire that will rise in the future will, too. Because Babylon's story is not finished, it never was. It is written into the rhythm of history itself. When the last stone crumbles and the last wall falls, what remains is the story, and Babylon's story will remain as long as humans remember what it means to build, to dream, to fall, and to rise again. Babylon is gone, but its name is forever.